It seems more so than anything else, we've got retail investors locally selling stocks to cushion themselves against inflation, raising cash for the holiday season as well. What's your perspective on markets activity right now?
Thank you very much, Alishia. It's always a pleasure. Well, looking at the market as of now, just as you noted earlier, well, it's a bit of a reduced volume participation in the market, and just as you noted there, foreign participation is still very high. We are seeing them doing 40 to 50% of the daily turnover. But looking at it in terms of the retail front, yes, just as you noted there, as we get into the festive season, we are seeing retailers net selling, and looking at what is happening in the petroleum industry, the demand-supply imbalance, as well as the price issues, we are seeing a bit of a concern in terms of how retail investors are going to finance their spending for this festive period. So in terms of the selling, we are seeing a bit of that, though the activity in the market is relatively flat.
We were talking about the banking sector yesterday and how it's still boasting appeal, especially with the positive economic picture that we've seen come to the fore. Quite a chunk of that growth story, however, rests on the prospects for the Eurozone. And with uncertainties there still plaguing, one has got to ask the question to what extent the market is pricing in some element of risk.
Thank you very much. Looking at the financial sector of especially our economy, and noting what is happening in the global front, looking at the banking sector in Kenya specifically, we are seeing the growth, especially for this year, has been phenomenal. Looking at them in terms of how they've been able to manage their expansion, their loan books, as well as taking advantage of the 5% GDP growth that we have been reflecting most of the year. And just as you noted earlier, we are seeing tourism and agriculture faring well. And as intermediaries, they are very well placed to be able to finance things like infrastructure growth, as well as the low interest rates, which is creating a bit of activity in terms of the performance of the market. And going forward, there's still a lot of opportunity for the banking stocks, especially in Kenya, looking at it in terms of their position, not really in terms of the foreign direct participation, but more of it in terms of the regional expansion, looking at how they are thinking about Rwanda, Sudan, Ethiopia, and some of these other markets that they can still be able to tap into.
Let's take a look at Barclays' performance yesterday, because it's been making steady gains this week on expectations that shareholders will benefit from a 3.5 billion shilling war chest after the sale of its custody business to Standard Chartered. But having said that, we also know that the war chest is going to be used to finance some of the restructuring processes the companies announced late last week as well.
Thank you very much. We're looking at Barclays specifically, how the trend has been, especially in the last 1 week. Technically speaking, the stock has almost become a speculative one, because we saw it dip from a high of 63, 64 to a low of 55 last week, and that caused a bit of a market concern. And just as you noted earlier, yes, there's a lot of speculation around the stock, notably because of the restructuring that they are planning to have, and also because there's anticipation of a lot of changes, especially noting that they have a bit of a boost in terms of the sale of the custody service. And because of that, the stock is very promising. And looking at it in terms of the fact that it's a blue chip, it's a fairly good dividend payer, and also if at all this restructuring, especially in terms of the top management or such, is going to be able to be profitable for the company, is going to be very good going forward. Looking at it in terms of the supply, though, as that now we are seeing the demand is almost 5 to 1, which shows a bit of a demand in terms of the uptake, but the price is steadily picking up, and now we are seeing it heading towards 60.
Samuel, where we've been talking about blue chips, so what's interesting is that we're also starting to see small cap firms like Transporter Express Kenya seeing support. What's the investment merit there? Because we don't usually have traders very active on stocks like these.
Well, looking at it in terms of some of these other small cap stocks, as at now we are seeing reduced activity in the market, and what is notable about some of these other small cap stocks is that the way they keep on trading, especially in terms of the swings. Like for instance, Express Kenya trades between 10 shillings and 8 shillings, and so we see whenever it comes to a low of that 8,750, we see a lot of demand on it because of the small price differences and volume margin trading, and because of that, that creates a lot of interest. Also looking at them in terms of their positioning in the transport sector, that also is some of the things that keeps on making the share swing, because petroleum prices are affecting their performance and such kind of things. But as at now, we are seeing a bit of speculative activity on some of those small caps, and the demand can be put into maybe most likely speculative activity.
Having said that, are you surprised at the fact that we're seeing Safaricom's share price receiving very little respite, despite the fact that it's sitting at the bottom end of its trading range?
Well, looking at Safaricom, yes, just as you noted there, we are seeing there's a possibility of it being a trading stock, especially because of the margins that it does. We saw it go as low as 4 shillings and 50 cents, and in the last 1 week or so, the demand has been very strong, but it has only pushed it up to a margin of around 4 shillings and 70. And looking at them, especially in terms of what we are seeing in the market, yesterday there was a corporate action about them in terms of their M-Pesa ability to transact a lot of monies, and because of that, we are hoping there'll be a bit of demand. But looking at it in terms of the swings, just as you noted there, it's a good trading stock, but maybe at around 450, because as of now it seems to be getting a resistance level of around 460, 470.